What's up, friends? Welcome to the 2-6 podcast with Luke and Adrian. On this podcast, we focus on Web3 and achieving your personal potential. On today's episode, we're diving into the power of decisiveness. We'll discuss the decisive duck from VeeFriends and how making swift decisions impacts our lives. From career moves to daily choices, we're exploring how to cut through indecision and make choices that propel us forward. Stay tuned as we dissect the balance between haste and hesitation and how to lean into decisiveness for personal and professional growth. With that all said, let's get to it.
Welcome to the 2-6 podcast with me and Luke. Today we're going to be talking about being decisive and our good VeeFriends characters, Mr. Decisive Duck. Luke, are you decisive?
I'm decisive. Honestly, I'm at a point with so much going on that indecision is just not an option because I got to just make choices as soon as possible so that I can get the things done.
Absolutely, dude. That's good. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes I think you and I can be a little over analytical, and sometimes it's better just to make a decision sometimes.
Yeah.
I got to do it because then I'll overthink things.
Right. Yeah. No, I definitely can be. I mean, it just depends on what's going on with it. But, sometimes, spending a little time hemming and hawing on some of the different options can kind of just doesn't do anybody any good. And sometimes depending on how complex the thing is, you need to do it. Other times it's, you can just, your first impulse is most likely the best one to go with.
Yeah, I agree. Because sometimes you spend so much time thinking about it that you miss the opportunity, or you simply just never make a decision. So it just kind of lingers or just goes away. The opportunity goes away. And sometimes I think personally, it's just, it's good just to make that leap, make the decision, man.
Yeah.
The decisive duck. I have to say, as you know, I do have Mr. Decisive Duck.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan. Actually, I reached for it. I was glad I have it. Still am glad I have it. And I use it quite often, even though I do give some thought sometimes too long. But truly, sometimes the best decision is to move on.
Right. Yeah, and let's give just a little bit of background too. So, I mean, we'll definitely get more into the decisive element of it. But for those listeners that may not have heard our most recent episode talking about our ambitious angel and other things from VeeFriends, might be good just to kind of give a little background on what VeeFriends is. So if you're not familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk, he has a Web3 project called VeeFriends, which really is kind of intending to span a lot beyond Web3, with Web3 at the core, of course, and that's always going to be where it started, but with a whole IP ecosystem of different things. And each of the characters that's part of the VeeFriends has usually some kind of attribute, like in this case, decisiveness. And then it's either a creature or it could be other things. So there's a duck, there's, oak monsters, there's all kinds of different things. And this is part of a series that we're just kind of taking, one or two at a time, kind of getting into, really kind of reflecting on what are those different attributes? How do they come to life in our lives? In some cases, they're things that we're really good at, and there's others that there are opportunities for us as well. So this is just kind of a place to talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's one thing Gary Vee touches. He does a great job touching on it, is all the attributes. I never really gave it much thought until I started watching more of his content. But truly, man, there's so many good characters that it just kind of I think it gives, I don't know about you, but it gives me kind of a good reminder of how to kind of go day by day. I think humility is probably one of them. Anyway,
Yeah, humble hedgehog.
Humble hedgehog, man. Humble hedgehog. Reminds me of the hedgehog from Sonic, but it's right though, right? I mean, it's truly just like, dude, there's so many day-to-day things. I'm sure you deal with a lot of day-to-day things where you're sometimes your emotions are like a roller coaster, where you're pissed off or you're super excited, and sometimes even when you get a little, not hateful. I mean, it's kind of like, but that whole smothered hate character, I kind of like that guy too, man, because it's almost like getting rid of that energy. I know we're not talking about him right now, but I'm just talking about in the characters in general. It's just truly good to kind of get some of that the reminder of what to kind of do or maybe handle things on a day-to-day basis. And that's why probably Decisive Duck is one of my favorite characters, because making a decision is so important. And it could be to do something. It may be to ask the girl out. It may be I'm just going to do this deal, even though it it doesn't pencil out, or maybe it does pencil out, but I can't find the fun. Whatever. I'm thinking more investment stuff. But sometimes, man, it's just easier just to make a decision and just go forward. You can't dwell too much into the numbers or dwell too much into the what ifs. It's sometimes just easier and better. Get it off your shoulders, make a decision.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's a couple of things just kind of set up, how we'll kind of approach talking about the decisiveness. I think there's, on one hand, there's making quick decisions and not, wasting time kind of pondering all the different options, those kinds of things. But I think another part is also knowing the difference of, when do we need to take some more time to make a more calculated decision. So I think it really
Yeah.
depends on the nature of what you're trying to do. So like if you're thinking about, a career change, well, there's repercussions that come with making a career change. Like there's, if you just said, what, I don't like this job, I'm going to quit. Well, if you have the reserves to make that happen, you totally can. But you also may have some other factors to think in there. Same thing if you're thinking about moving from one place to another, that might be a bigger decision versus what am I going to eat tonight? Wasting all that time kind of looking at every single Yelp review in the
Hey.
world. That might not be the one to spend the half an hour. I think going through all
Okay.
that.
So what do you? Let's question Q&A real quick.
Yeah.
When your girlfriend says, "What do you feel like eating?" What do you say?
You say, you'll never guess what I want. I bet you can't guess it. And then she will say something, oh my God, I can't believe you got it right on the first shot. And then you're golden. You don't have to make a decision. You just
Deciding what to wear to dinner, where to go eat for dinner. Oh, it's exhausting. I know I'm not alone, but truly, it's like, baby, you look good. Let's go here. Let's go to Pars. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go eat some Mediterranean. I don't know. Let's go. Let's eat sushi. I'm down. I'm hungry. I'm not picky. Let's go eat something.
right, exactly. That's kind of where you get that. It's interesting because there's even folks that have a lot of big decisions to make, try to eliminate decisions that they can't be bothered with. So like Mark Zuckerberg's famous for it. He wears the same exact thing every single day. Barack Obama did the same thing as well. I think he had two suits. He had a navy suit and a charcoal suit, and that's all he would wear. So the idea is he could go into a completely dark closet, pick out a jacket, a tie, a shirt, and they'll always match.
It's like
So
Homer
it's
Simpson. Homer Simpson
yeah.
wore the same thing every
Well,
day,
well, cartoon characters do it just because the animators don't want to be bothered with making a bunch of different clothing items.
right?
So
No, that's awesome. And I think a lot of it too, dude, is even decisions with general business, right? I mean, I think you can for some of us that are analytical, it's a lot easier to numbers don't lie, but don't get totally hung up in all the numbers. Definitely do the numbers, but don't try to maybe like fall in love with the deal or fall in love with the job so much that you stay in that unhappy situation. I think for me, sometimes I'm stuck on the stupid deal right now, and I'm trying to make it work, and I'm pushing it, and truly I may not even have a deal, right? But my decision is like, just submit the offer, submit the LOI, and let's see what happens. Because if they don't do it, then I move on, and maybe they'll come
mhm.
back. But sometimes it's just making that decision to get you to move forward or to get you to start looking at other stuff. But I think some of the other decisions are, of course, I'm always going back to real estate, but sometimes in some of these deals, it's you either have to decide to give them what they want if they don't want to compromise, or don't give them what they want and just move on. And I
Yeah,
think I think it's just so huge, man, not to get so strung up on the decision and maybe what the outcome of the decision is, because
hmm,
truly you'll never know what that outcome is going to be unless you actually make that decision, whether
yeah,
it's to do it, to not to do it. The whole thing is just make a decision, and it is what it is. Keep moving on. If it was good, great. If it was bad, move on. Right?
yeah. I think the thing to do with that is like if you're trying to think through, okay, when is it better to just make a decision versus to ponder longer and longer? I think
Yeah.
one of them is, what are the costs involved in this? And I'm not talking about dollar costs. I know it's a real estate interaction that you're talking about, but in terms of, is taking more time to make the decision going to be a benefit to the situation, or is it going to hurt that? And I think if it's something that, like, let's kind of going back to that dinner plans example. Like, if we're spending half an hour figuring out where we're going to go eat, that's a half an hour that I'm just getting hungrier and hungrier, and we have less time to have a nice night. And so in that case, it might be a case where it's like, hey, let's just decide. It'll probably be fine. Wherever we go is probably going to be fine. And so let's just make a decision for that.
Yeah.
If you're talking about a real estate transaction, if it's spending weeks and weeks going back and forth on negotiating a deal, well, what could you do with that time if you settled on the deal? Let's say it's $1,000, $2,000 that you're haggling over in that situation. Well, what if you're the agent? Like, what could you do with that extra time? You could find another deal and make even more money, possibly. So I think that's part of it, is just kind of knowing that, delaying a decision, even though sometimes it may be necessary, there is a cost to it usually. And is that cost worth the trade-off of, all that time?
Yeah. What made you go back to school, Luke? Let's talk about that decision.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I honestly intended to go back and get my master's right after I graduated with my bachelor's, which I'm gonna give away my age for a bit, but 24 years ago I got my bachelor's degree, and I will get my master's 24 years after I got my bachelor's degree. So it was always something I wanted to do. That one was just kind of an interesting scenario. It's going to sound like an excuse, and maybe it is to some degree, but a product of having a lot of success early on in my career. So usually I wouldn't go more than a year and a half without getting a promotion to do something else. And then that kind of created a cycle where it was, okay, I'm going to, dedicate all my time to getting really good at this job, developing for the next job. And then you get the next job. So you have to focus all your energy on being good at that, getting to the next one. And then over a period of time, you end up in a place where it's just, you're constantly getting other roles. You're having to give all of your effort toward development in the career side of things. And so that was kind of that. And for me, I kind of got to a point where, like, my undergrad's in business, a master's degree in business. Like, for the company I work for, we hire MBAs well below the level that I'm at now. So there wasn't really any, like, return on that investment, especially the business schools I was looking at. Like, it was $100,000 that they charge for tuition for that, more than that in some cases. And so there wasn't really any kind of return on investment for that. But as I became more interested in blockchain technology, learning more about that, like, one, I wanted to learn the skill anyway. But two, being able to have that opportunity to learn from and network with other people that are doing that was just really appealing to me. So that's kind of why I did that.
Yeah. I think it was a good decision, man. It's
Thanks.
fun, right? It's sometimes the water gets a little stagnant, and sometimes you just need a little aeration.
Yeah. It is fun. It is fun. So in our last episode, we talked about the ambitious angel, and we talked about whether I might have been a little overly ambitious with signing up for this course that I'm in right now. So it's digital currency programming that I'm taking right now,
Oh, that
and
sounds fun.
it is. So I'm gonna get to do some coding with Bitcoin and Python. And listeners, I do not have a background in coding, and so one of the things that is kind of been a realization of mine is that the analogy of, I joined a hockey team without knowing how to skate. So, or how to play hockey for that matter. So, whereas everyone else might be focusing on the hockey part, but they already know how to skate, I got to figure out how to skate too. So, I've been spending most of the last couple of days getting a Python environment set up, getting Bitcoin Core installed on my devices and stuff. So, it's been fun. It's definitely the kind of thing I want to learn. It's challenging, but it's a decision that I feel really good about.
I think it's good, man. And sometimes you just have to dive into it. You know, it's almost like learning another language. Sometimes you just have to. It's easier probably to learn the language just by jumping into it
Mm-hmm.
than easing your way of taking a class, Dude, I still can't speak Spanish. How horrible that sounds. I still can't do it. But if I were to throw me in there, I'm pretty sure I would start figuring it out really fast.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
put
it's
on
just
your
one of those
skates,
things.
Luke. Go play some hockey.
Right. It's one of those things, getting you out of your comfort zone, and giving you a reason to do it, I think, is another big
Yeah.
thing. And I know we're getting a little off topic with the decisiveness, but
No, it's all part of it.
for right, but for the like, for examples, I have been taking Python courses using like an online, like, teach yourself kind of tool called Codecademy, and you get to learn how to do it. But I don't have a task that I'm trying to do. Like, they have assignments and things that you do, but it's not necessarily doing. It's doing it in their training system, which they have a whole like Python environment that you can do it. But even having done that, I don't know how to set one up, or I didn't know how to set one up. And so, kind of getting a task, like, you have to actually do something that connects your Python environment to the Bitcoin blockchain and do things. It's just different having the, like, okay, I have a thing I have to get done. And then you also have other people that you can kind of bounce ideas off that are in the course with you and stuff. So,
No, that's cool. They threw you into the deep side of the pool.
yes, for sure. And
Swim, Luke.
I'm
Swim.
thankful that not everybody in the class has a coding background. I think there's 2 or 3 of us that don't. So that part's been, at least I'm not the only one that's learning all that.
Well, you got some chat GPT, dude. It'll help out a little bit.
It does help a lot. It's on this first step that I'm on, it's not super helpful, but
Yeah.
for the actual coding part, it will be.
No, that's good, man. That's good. Well, cool, man. I think that was a good little talk about being decisive. I think it's kind of an important little role in truly a day to day life with truly it's personal and business, to where just making those little decisions throughout the day versus just dwelling over and overthinking it. Sometimes it's truly just easier just to make that quick decision. You get the outcome, you can respond to it or deal with it, and then just move on to the next and keep rolling. Sometimes, like you said, though, Luke, I think you're right. Some are pretty minute. They're small. When you get into the bigger ones, it does take a little bit more time. But sometimes, it's got to feel right though too, right? I mean, things got to feel good. Maybe I'm more of that kinesthetic type of guy, to where things got to feel good for me to do things. Because if I overthink something, I'll just never make a decision. It's got to feel good. It's got to look good. Do it. Don't wait too long. Don't let the girl get away. Or maybe it's good. I don't know.
Mm,
You don't know. Maybe it's good. Who knows?
yeah.
I'm just rambling, Luke.
Yeah, no, you're good, man. So yeah, and I think let's talk a little bit more the more complex decisions too, though, because I think it's
Yeah,
part of it's kind of like knowing the difference between the two, right? So I think we covered kind of the easier ones, like the ones that are, don't overthink those kind of things. But sometimes there are situations where it is a more calculated decision that you might want to make, and there's different ways that you can do that. So some people use kind of a decision tree where you take a piece of paper and you write between the two, like the pros and the cons of doing each of those options. I think that's definitely one way that you can kind of go about that. Another one,
yeah,
sometimes for me, is just, so it's going to sound like you're just postponing the decision, and in some ways you are, but it's kind of putting it. I call it like just kind of putting it on the back burner, or putting it like into my subconscious, where maybe it's a decision I have to make quickly. I have to make it pretty soon, but it's not doesn't need to be made right this moment. I might just kind of take some time, go for a walk, go for a run, and just kind of let it percolate in my mind, and
yep,
then eventually I'll kind of come back with, okay, I know exactly what I want to do, that kind of thing, where it's not as it's almost like trying to go to sleep. Like, if you're trying to go to sleep, if I know, like, I have to get to sleep now in 10 minutes, then sometimes you end up staying up 3 or 4 hours. But if you kind of relax your mind, it will allow you to go to sleep. And I think sometimes decisions can be that way too, when you're just kind of not putting so much pressure on the decision. You kind of allow your mind to think through what's important to you. What are some of the different factors? Maybe you do need more information to come in. But I think that one's
yeah.
a big one.
I think you lost
So
me at percolate, Luke.
I know. So
You
listeners,
you
Adrian
got to do the
and
sound. You got to do
no,
the sound for the
I can't
listeners.
do
You
this.
got come on. You got to do it. It sounds you do a good job with it.
I
For anybody, I
I
use a
haven't.
percolator to make my coffee, and
Yes.
and Luke doesn't have a percolator. But anyway, come on, Luke, do the sound.
I can't even remember how to do it. It's like, I'm going to definitely edit that out. But
No, don't edit out the
I didn't do a good job. I don't know how to, I don't remember how they sound.
Dude, percolators are awesome, dude.
No, they're fine. I may give them another shot at some point in time, but
All stainless steel, no plastic. Must I say more?
all right, listeners, for Adrian's recommendation in percolators, check out the show notes for a link to his favorite percolator that you can buy on
Dude,
Amazon.
it's simple. Grandpa and Grandma had one. Just saying. Works great. Still works great. Never break. You don't have to worry about breaking a coffee pot. It's good old stainless steel. American
Right.
made. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Anyway,
funny.
Sorry to get off topic.
No, you're good. You're good. So I think those are just a few things to think of. What's that?
No.
Those are a few things to kind of think about when it comes to being decisive. I think that everyone kind of has their own way to do that, but I think one of the other things that is kind of a known thing in like decision making, that kind of thing. If you think of a place like Costco, any listeners, if you're a member of Costco or you've been there, Sam's Club to some degree as well, the fewer choices that you have, generally the happier you're going to be with your decision. So sometimes I think an early step, if there are a lot of different factors, it's just eliminating some. So like if you think about when you go to Costco, it's like, do you want toothpaste? Great. Do you want Crest or Colgate? Like that's all they got. You don't have to decide, oh, well, there's, Crest Pro Health. And then this one has this one's whitening, but this one's, whatever. You don't have to decide all that. So just kind of narrow them down. Just like get down to just a few things, and then makes it a lot easier to make that decision. You're going to be happier with the end choice because all that extra choice sometimes just causes more anxiety. Another good example of that is Cheesecake Factory. If anyone's ever been to the Cheesecake Factory restaurant, I think they're definitely throughout the U.S. Listeners that are international may not be as aware of them, but in case you don't, they have this giant book that has probably 70 things that you could order at any given time. And so for some, it causes just a little bit of analysis paralysis with all of those choices. So just kind of narrow them down, go from there.
I never knew there were so many toothpaste before, Luke.
There are a lot.
You could see how much decisiveness that I have with toothpaste. And cheesecake, just throw some strawberries in that bad boy.
Well, Cheesecake Factory is a restaurant, so they got food, like all kinds of foods.
Oh, see, I've never even been one. I've had their cheesecake. Anyway, I don't know. I get, yeah. Dude, I eat almost the same thing. I'm a simple dude, man. I try to go outside the box and try things, but I just it's like The Onion. You introduced me to this great pizza place downtown Austin, and that's the only pizza place I want to go to, right? I mean, I don't know. Man, I could go for a slice.
I mean, you're going to have one pretty soon here. So, and so listeners, so South by Southwest is coming up in Austin here in a couple of weeks. So I think many of you all know that I live in Austin. Adrian and his wife, Stacy, practically live in Austin. They come out here a few times a year, and they're going to be here in a few weeks for South by Southwest. If you are a listener of the show and want to meet up with us while we're here for that, just shoot us a note in Twitter/X, and we'd love to connect. We're planning an event for another conference that's coming up later on in the late spring related to the Cock coin that we've talked about in previous episodes. So if you are interested in being a part of that in any way, shoot us a note there as well, and we'd love to connect with you.
I'm excited for that, man. I think that's gonna be cool.
All right. Well, listeners, I think that's going to probably do it for us today. If you did enjoy today's show, definitely give us a like and subscribe and rating on the app that you're using to listen to the podcast.
Luke, be decisive. Everybody be decisive out there. Don't dwell on little decisions. Make those decisions. Don't live with the regret of never making that choice, because you'll love the fact that you made the decision. But no, man, I think that's good. Let's be decisive. I got a few things I got to decide on right now too, so let's do it.
Awesome. All right. Peace out, bro.
2-6.
Thanks for tuning in and spending some quality time with us. We're all about bringing value, and we hope today's episode hit the mark for you. If you like what you heard, follow us wherever you get your podcast, and while you're at it, give us a rating and share some comments letting us know what you'd like us to cover in future episodes. If you know someone who'd appreciate our content as much as you do, we'd love it if you share this podcast with them. It really means the world to us and helps get the word out. Here's to growing together and bringing you more incredible content week after week. Until next time, friends, keep chasing your potential and living your best Web3 life.